Hi, I'd like to talk today about Emma by Jane Austen. Jane Austen is one of the biggies of the semester, and a semester, quite frankly, only filled with biggies. But she is one of the greats. In fact, Austen is so popular, even today, that she inspires people who read her. They're called Janeites. They read her over and over and over again. In fact, one could make a good argument that this is one of the things that separates great writing from merely good writing. That is, every time you reread a novel that's great, you get something different out of it. And it lasts. It's been some 200 years since Emma. But it's still relevant today, as evidenced by multiple movie versions of Emma, including, of course, the satire Clueless. Now, what is it about Emma, the novel in particular, which makes it so rewarding? The novel is termed a novel of manners, a type of novel, if you will, which seems very concerned with how people live. In a simple sense, there are no wars, no battles, no assassinations, no palace intrigue. Right? This is simple, ordinary life. Almost the stuff of soap operas, without the evil twin. In Emma, we see a young woman who's very intelligent, but not particularly disciplined in her intelligence. In fact, one of the aspects of Emma that's called out at the very beginning of the novel is how, because her mother has passed, Miss Taylor, the governess, has been the substitute. But she's been more of a friend than a mother, in the sense that she's been unwilling or unable to really discipline Emma. And so Emma leads a life of extreme privilege, not just a financial privilege, which of course is very nice, but quite frankly, to hardly ever be told she's wrong. The only person who ever tells her she's wrong is Mr. George Knightley. So what does this set up for us? What are some of the major themes of this novel? Well, it's classic to talk about Emma as representing imagination. She does get carried away. In fact, if anything, she fools herself more often than anybody else. Mr. George Knightley, on the other hand, represents reason or rational thought. He's the one who's not afraid to criticize Emma, to point out her flaws to her, and to indicate where she is going wrong. In particular, her treatment of Harriet Smith, the natural daughter of somebody. Smith, even in our own time, is used as kind of a generic name. And indeed, Harriet does not know who her parents are. What this does is it makes Harriet a blank slate for Emma to write on. And she imagines Harriet, to be of a higher station of birth than, quite frankly, Mr. Knightley believes is reasonable. And thus try to get her married to as high up on the social ladder as Emma can manage to get her. So let's talk about this issue of marriage for a second, especially as it concerns the novel. Marriage is an institution, obviously. What kind of institution is it? On the one hand, it seems like it ought to be an institution of love, but it's also an economic institution, financial institution. That is to say, how is a woman going to secure her future? She secures it by getting married to the best possible man, and by best, I mean the one with the most money. This will be governed by her own social status. as well as other factors. And we see in the novel character Miss Bates, who has never been married. Miss. She's never gotten married. And her family, indeed, is impoverished. Her mother, Mrs. Bates, but her father's dead, is old. Her mother is old. And neither one of them can particularly provide. They basically live off the kindness of their neighbors. An important other aspect is how marriage changes things. There's a line very early in the novel about how matrimony changes things. It's the beginning of change, because after matrimony you have children perhaps, but even without children, your whole life situation will be altered. And remember, there's no get out of jail free card here, guys. No divorces. Once you're married, you're kind of stuck until death. So, we begin the novel with the marriage of Miss Taylor and Mr. Weston, which is a very advantageous marriage for Miss Taylor, her governess. Mr. Weston, good guy, right? Solid, financially stable. So Miss Taylor is now, quote unquote, set. Right? Emma herself does not need to worry about such matters because she is financially set. She has a sister, Isabel, who's married to George Knightley's brother, John. By the way, John is my favorite character in this novel because he's the one who's crabby. They're set. In fact, they, with their children, represent in many ways the best possible situation, family situation. There is a character named Frank Churchill, who's also very important in the novel. Frank is the son of Mr. Weston, but he was not raised by Mr. Weston or his own biological mother because she passed. And Mr. Weston in the army was unable to raise his own son. So instead, passing off to a relative, he is raised and takes the last name Churchill. He represents the kind of man who, at least in terms of situation and age, might be appropriate for Emma to marry. And indeed, she fantasizes a little bit that this may be the kind of person that she would marry. I don't want to give too much stuff away, because if you haven't completed the novel, I don't want to tell you the ending. But there are some character traits with Mr. Churchill that are at least, shall we say, troubling. To get back to Harriet Smith, the blank slate, the natural daughter of somebody, Emma decides that she is going to marry Harriet off because Harriet, has very low ambitions. She just fallen in love with a farmer named Robert Martin. Oh my God, who would marry a farmer? Well, from Emma's position, he's too low on the totem pole for her. And if Harriet did marry Robert Martin, she would no longer be able to socialize with Harriet. So in other words, very selfishly, because she just wants to be entertained, Emma leads Harriet away from marrying Mr. Robert Martin. She settles on an appropriate target, the vicar, Mr. Elton. Now keep in mind what I said, marriage being a financial institution. In other words, if you can marry somebody with money, you'll be set. This, however, does not only work for women marrying men. It also works for men marrying women, which is where Mr. Elton is. As a vicar, a pastor, if you will, he doesn't particularly make loads of money. But because of his privileged position as a member of the church, he does have access to the highest levels of society in Highbury. He's just not really financially able to swing with those people. and he knows it. And he wants to make a marriage that will be to his financial advantage, as Mr. George Knightley points out very early on. But Emma doesn't see this. And she believes she can get Mr. Elton and Harriet together, have them fall in love, and get married. Well, that would make it a very short novel. So needless to say, that does not happen, but I don't want to give too much away, as I said. A couple other major characters that need to be mentioned. Jane Fairfax. Jane is, of course, the niece to Miss Bates. She also has no money, and she has been in training to become a governess, like Miss Taylor was a governess. The thing about being a governess, and this is something hopefully you can appreciate, the governess is a kind of a tweener, in the sense that she is a paid employee of a family to raise the kids and take care of them, etc. In that sense, she's kind of like a servant, but she's really above the servants, or the other servants in the household. In fact, in this novel, you see very few servants whatsoever, although they obviously have to be there because nobody's got a flippin' job. Nobody's doing anything. The servants are doing everything. But the governess is above that, hangs out with the family more because, of course, she's in charge of the children, and yet she's not a member of the family. And once the children reach a certain age, or her services are no longer required for whatever reason, the governess will be shipped off to a new place. So Jane Fairfax, pretty much the same age as Emma, but from different circumstances, has forced to use her brains and talent to discipline herself and to become very good at everything that she does, unlike Emma, who's strictly a dilettante, right? She just kind of flounces around, practices piano for a little while, and thinks that's really good, instead of, for instance, practicing a couple hours a day, every day, until you really know what you're doing. Same thing with doing her art. Same problem there. Right? Emma's a dilettante. Jane is a serious one. So marriage is very important. Who you marry is going to determine pretty much the rest of your life. And therefore, it becomes an issue that is vital to those who need to be financially taken care of. Emma, on the other hand, doesn't. And therefore, she doesn't feel that she will ever need to marry because she has the means, she has the money. She's wealthy. And here, Austen skewers the notion of what is marriage about. If marriage is strictly about money, then there is no reason for Emma to ever get married. A couple final words. First of all, Emma's father, Mr. Woodhouse. One of my least favorite characters in all of English literature. I just want to slap that guy around. Talk about a whiner, complainer. Hypochondriac doesn't even do him justice. He is profoundly annoying. And yet everybody gives him loads of respect. There's a funny bit near the end of the novel, which again I won't give away, about Mr. Woodhouse and his, we'll just call it, lack of strength. And I don't mean physical strength. In the end, I hope you really enjoy reading Emma. There's a lot going on in it. I know, however, when I was in college myself, the first time I read Emma, when I got to the key climactic scene, I threw the book against the wall. Oh my God. I hope you don't throw your book against the wall when you get to that same scene. You'll know the scene when you get to it. Trust me, you will. It's a very important scene. Is Emma serious? Or is it trivial? You decide.